Pro Tunes.
Man, it's been a long time. A long time. Sometimes when I'm interested in something, I'll go hard, but then eventually I'll crash. And that's kind of how it was for writing Scout. When I first started writing this, I was coming out with chapters very often, and I would get so inspired. Sometimes I would roll out of bed and write something down. Now looking back on it, like I'm proud of what I was able to do. It's a little bit of a shame that I took this big break, but maybe it happens sometimes. I don't know. I've never tried writing something like this before. Looking back at some of the drawings, I'm like, man, maybe I could have drawn them better. Alright, so I'm going to read you the 12th chapter of my basically fan fiction type book, spin-off book, Scout. And something that's kind of nice about this is the nature of Scout is a diary, so like it doesn't demand that it's, it doesn't demand that it's all grammatically correct, and it's kind of personal. There's room for mistakes and stuff like that because it's just expression rather than like anything that's going to be graded or anything. Okay, let me read this now. This is Scout chapter 12. I haven't written in weeks. Just when I thought things were going well, things took a drastic turn for the worst. I think I'm finally able to talk about it. My heart really grew attached to things being okay. My dad threw me to the floor, even so I was still reasonably content. Things right now are, I guess, calm, but things did get really ugly. For some time now, my mom would go out early in the morning. My dad and I would sleep in, so we couldn't really be mindful of where or what she was doing. But she was going to a local church. She made a few friends there. My mom never had too many friends. She's kinda like me. Never could keep any. But my father being a drunk and an abuser made my mother very secretive and non-talkative. My mother has always been to herself. I guess she has a lot to be insecure about. Every now and then, my mom will give it to my dad, like exploding, not being able to keep it in. My dad's go-to response is gaslighting her about how she's ungrateful, and being the breadwinner, he deserves more or something, but that's a load of bull. I can't blame my mom for blowing up, even if it costs her a bruise. One night, my mom chewed out my dad. The reason was that my mom admitted to my dad, out of frustration, that she had squealed to some ladies at church about her abuse and my father's alcoholism and asked for prayer. I never took my mom as the praying type. Maybe it was out of desperation. Then again, my mom and I were never close. I felt like we might have been when I was little, not so much now. Even at the dinner table, we don't talk. We often have the TV playing while we eat. I think it's on just to not have awkward dead air. This night, my father erupted, probably because he was exposed. He was utterly insulted that he would be seen as somebody needing prayer. My dad got violent. It's hard to write about. I was in my room with my door closed. The sounds of crashing and slapping, I had a panic attack. Or at least I think so. I couldn't breathe. My head felt hot, but the rest of my body felt cold. I wanted to be brave, but I couldn't. I tried to block out the noise, hiding my head under the pillow. It was no use. I just had to get out of there. I put on my jacket that was hanging on the chair and headed for the window. I could feel the window was cold. I was not looking forward to it. I climbed out and began to run. All I could see was my breath in the cold moonlight. I didn't know where to go. I just didn't want to be there. Every time I leave, I feel guilty. Even if I tried to help, my dad would put me in my place. Although I'm a tomboy, I'm still a girl. I wish I was a boy sometimes. Maybe then I could do something. Although, I like being a girl, because I like defeating what is commonly thought of girls. I decided to go to the same park I ran away to a few months ago, where I met Ponyboy for the first time. On the way there, I remembered then his face in the dim light of the night. His very non-threatening face with a look of compassion. I remembered when I got to see him by Bucks and being able to see the details of his face in the daylight, the shine from the grease in his light brown hair, the glare of the sun in his gray eyes. It comforted me. A little anyway. I was holding myself tight. Boy, was it cold. I sometimes feel so foolish when I escape. My father, who at one time nailed shut my window in our old house, now I don't really think he even cares if I leave. What would he think if I never came back? It feels tempting sometimes. At least I could be stationary and live my life on my terms. This has been my favorite place to live. At first I hated it. Everybody was calling me a greaser girl and putting me in a box. Now I sometimes feel a pull towards that word. The greasers I have become associated with have made me feel so welcome. Well, not Curly. I could do without him. Evermore was it tempting to leave this time. This time was different. The noises behind my bedroom door were so ugly, I shudder even thinking about it now. I knew if I had left for good, there were some belongings I would have hated to leave behind. One of them is my journal. I didn't think I would ever care to ever write a journal or a diary, but life got interesting, at least to me anyway. I liked the idea that I could look back from when I felt happy and felt like I belonged. Read about the Curtis brothers. Derry strong and protective. Sora light-hearted and understanding. Two-Bed in a sense of humor and contagious mischievous grin. Steve and our almost rivalry-like banter. Angela, well, she has my back, which is cool, I guess. Ben, just a harmless bookworm. And of course, Pony. I never vocalized it, but he's probably my best friend. Which feels good, but weird to say. Probably because I never really had much of a best friend. He's just my favorite person right now. When I got to the park, I spotted a bench. I'm not sure, but it may be the only bench there. The park isn't huge, but big enough to typically have more than one. I walked a little faster when I spotted it. I just wanted to sit for a while and hopefully come back when the chaos was over. Sometimes I can get pretty lucky when my dad drunkenly falls asleep rather quickly. Before I got to sit down, I heard a noise. "Hey," the voice said. It startled me. My gasp created a big cloud in the cold air. I looked to my left and saw a man in the light of the park light by the park bench. He looked very rough. I was very scared. At least with my dad, I have an expectation, but this time I didn't know what to expect. "Come here," he said. I backed away and knocked over a trash bin. He approached me while I was on the ground in a pile of trash. In amongst the trash, there was a green glass bottle. I picked it up with my right hand and threw it at the guy. I got up as fast as I could and ran away as fast as I could. The cold air rushing into my lungs didn't feel so great. Man, I wish I could peel like Pony. I ran as fast as I could, and I knew where I was going. Somewhere warm. And I don't mean temperature, although temperature was icing on the cake. The Curtis house. Derry never locks the door in case any one of the boys want to crash in the middle of the night. Pony said he's had surprising guests. Angela and Curly's brother Tim has stopped by before. Again, the loyalty of the Greasers has left an impression on me, and they have accepted me as theirs. While I was running, a sense of gratitude came over me and soothed my adrenaline a bit. In all of the other places that I've lived, I would not have had a place to go. I would just find somewhere. I got over my fear of the dark by running away. I always hoped one of my parents would look for me, but they never did. But this time I wasn't going to go back. I always at least came back. I never got used to the awkward silent atmosphere after a bad fight. I finally reached the Curtis house. It's always a weird feeling being cold and sweaty at the same time. As I approached the door, I had a fear this was the odd occasion they had locked the door. I had never felt their doorknob this cold. I opened the door slowly. Although there was a slight creaking sound, no one woke up. I felt so relieved being there. Immediately I jumped under the blanket they had on the couch. I felt so relieved being there. Immediately, I jumped under the blanket they had on their couch to warm up. A part of me wanted to lock the door behind me, but that's not what they do here. I felt safe enough. Boy, did it ever beat finding a spot outside. I wondered if my parents realized this time I didn't come back. I kinda hoped they did. While trying to sleep, I could hear the chaos of my parents in my head. I would have liked to have turned on the TV for some white noise, but I didn't want to wake anyone. I thought about the man in the park. I wondered if I misunderstood him. I guess I can't be too careful, I guess. I think my running tired me out. I passed out pretty fast. The next morning, I woke to a surprise. In multiple ways, to say the least. I woke up to Derry whipping me with his towel. He had just come out of the shower. He wakes up earlier than everyone. Ow, I yelled. I came out from under the blankets, and he was, well, bare. As soon as he noticed, he hid himself with the towel and quickly walked out of the room. Sorry, he said. Guys, he yelled out to wake up the boys. What happened? Soda said as he came out of the room. I replied in a mourning voice. I got towel whipped by Derry. Soda laughed. Not the first time he's woken up an unexpected guest that way. Pony came out right then. He asked, Wait, did you see anything? Soda elbowed him in the side. I just hid myself under the blanket. I saw a lot, but I'm not sure if I saw, anything. Derry came out dressed, minus socks. Soda shook his head, looking at Derry, saying, It ain't right being naked in the presence of a young lady. Pony elbowed Soda in the side. Derry just rolled his eyes. He put his hands on his hips and asked, Scout, what brings you here? My folks are fighting again, I said. Fighting? He asked. Yeah, like really ugly stuff, you got me? Derry pulled Pony to the side. Soda sat down beside me to comfort me. We will figure this out, he said. It felt good hearing that. I'm not sure if I've ever heard that. It was kind of funny seeing his hair not combed back like it usually is. I guess greasers don't wear their grease to bed. I can kind of hear Derry talking a little aggressively with Pony. The calm I felt from Soda turned into a knot in my stomach. I didn't want to be a problem. Pony and Derry came back out from the other room. Derry, while buckling his belt, then said, Hey, listen, Scout, I gotta go. We have some cereal. Help yourself. Pony sat next to me and put his arm around me. How'd you sleep, he asked. I said, good enough, I think. Derry and Soda headed off to work. I reckon that Derry drove Soda to work, leaving Pony and I to eat breakfast. I kinda wanted to ask if we could just take the day off. Pony actually likes school, though. I don't have my books, I told Pony. That's a bummer, he said. I'm sure it won't be a problem for now. Kids leave their books home every now and then. When he said for now, I wonder how long he actually meant. I didn't really feel like going home. I really hoped I could stay for a while. Although not having my books would be an issue, I didn't even bring back To Kill a Mockingbird to return to Pony. The book culminated in a terrible end, as I feared. I don't mean that it was badly written, I just mean Tom Robinson in the book was oppressed and killed for nothing at all, falsely accused for violating a white woman, During this time, I think back to that story and try to understand that my situation can be worse. It doesn't make me feel better as much as I'd like, but I can think it. For Ben, home is his salvation, and the outside world is his danger. My home is the opposite from his home. I feel safe, at least on this side of town. It's weird to think how I feel a part of a tribe, simply because I fit in. I didn't ask to, it just kind of happened. Maybe because of my clothes are a little raggedy, my hair isn't fancy, I don't speak eloquently. Lord knows I'm not of money. Admittedly, I've wondered about if I'd rather have a safe haven like Ben, somewhere where I can hide away, or having a hellhole of a home, but a group of greaseheads who accept me and allow me to hang around. When I do, I always feel convicted, like it's wrong to think about. I don't know. It's what I think about sometimes. Sometimes my mind just goes places. Pony and I started walking towards school. He decided to take me the long way. He started telling me stories about this old man. He used to chat with him over his fence when Pony started going the long way to school. He hasn't heard from him in a while. He thinks he may have passed away. He jokingly told me, well, at least I'll never be late now. I giggled. You could tell the mood was a bit somber. At first, I thought it was just the nature of me running away, and all that. That was until Ponyboy took me to a railroad with parked freight trains. He told me after Johnny had passed away, he would try to find some private places for some time alone. Hanging out in empty freight trains while they're parked was a place he would go, sometimes to cry. The only greaser I know who would admit that. We sat inside one of the cars. It was nice to be hidden from the slight cold breeze. Ponyboy broke down what he had on his mind. He took me there for a reason. Listen, Scout, Pony began saying. Derry this morning let me know that he had planned to talk to the social worker who dealt with us about you and your family situation after work. I freaked out. I felt just so utterly exposed. And when did I say I was cool with it? I exclaimed. Ponyboy replied, this is serious, Scout. And now we're involved, letting you stay with us. Great. Now I'm gonna get stuffed into some group home. Thanks a lot, I said. I stormed out of the train car. Ponyboy yelled back, Scout, wait. I'm sorry I involved you, I said, while speedily walking away. Pony gathered his books, which bought me some time to get further away. I took a pathway that led into a neighborhood to my left. I knew then I would be out of sight. I hoped that I'd lose Ponyboy, although there was a small part of me that wanted him to catch me. I knew he and Derry just wanted to help. The path led me to somewhere familiar. I decided to walk home. The days of my house being home are very well numbered, I thought. I started imagining being stuffed in a group home, with no privacy, fighting over the TV if they even have one, other kids getting into my stuff. Would I even have room for my collection of books? Where would they ship me off to? Another town? Another city? I like it here. Or at least on this side of town. There was a long stretch that was basically my street. In the distance I could see cop cars. At first I had my doubts that it was at my house. The closer I got, the more that it seemed like they were in fact at my house. I started to run. Let me tell you, running in the cold isn't fun. I hate sucking in cold wind. Adrenaline was shooting through my body. When I reached my house, my heart dropped. 4 cop cars were sitting there, 2 on our grass. There were 2 cops standing guard. There were some neighbors watching from afar. I tried to run into the house, and a cop stopped me. This is my house, I yelled. I understand, the cop said, but you cannot go in at this time. Why, what's going on? I said in distress. We got a distress call at this address. There are officers inside the house handling the situation. We advise that you wait outside until the situation is handled. The other cop began saying, Are you the missing girl? Scout, I hear from behind. In comes Ponyboy. Figured he came after me. Instead of answering the cop, I turned around towards him. It felt so good seeing him. His greasy hair looked especially shiny in the morning sunlight. It almost made me grin. Instead of talking to the cop, I just sunk my head in Ponyboy's chest. He gave me a big hug. It was very nice. Although he was running, he didn't smell bad. The hug could have been better because he was hugging me with books in his one arm. Soon after, the cops came out with my dad. He was cuffed, behind his back with 2 officers accompanying him. He actually looked sad, an expression I'm not used to. My dad looked at me, and then looked to the ground almost like he was disappointed. Then my mom came out. I said just earlier my heart sank. Well, my heart sank even lower. My mother had a black eye and was bleeding from the brow, and her lip looked fat. She was crying. I started crying. "Mom," I yelled, and I ran to her right through the cops. And I gave her a big hug. We just sobbed together in silence. We don't hug. My mom was never my enemy, but hugging just wasn't a thing. In this moment, I appreciated her giving me this journal. I know it was an act of compassion. That I could get it out on paper, you know? I asked my mom what happened. That morning, my dad had found a flyer my mom had brought home from the church nearby. The flyer was for a support group during the week. My dad had crumpled it up and tossed it out. My mom yelled at him, "Why did you do that?" My dad told her, "You ain't going." My mom, who had been hoping to actually go, was very upset and started to weep over the crumpled flyer. My dad, who had started shaving, told her, "We don't need those religious people telling us how to live and stick their noses in our business." My mom lost it and freaked out at him, slamming her fists in his chest, telling him, "If anybody needs to be told how to live, it's you. You're a drunk who can't keep a job, and your daughter left and didn't come home last night." My dad got physical with her, backhanded her to be exact, and told her he could have cut himself shaving with his finger in her face. My mom walked over to the phone and told him she's going to call the school and tell them to let her know if I make it in today. Instead, she decided to phone the police. My dad prohibits her from phoning the police. I've snuck out many times and they never called once. This time was different though. I didn't come home. I didn't call them or leave a note either. The phone was in her hand as she thought hard about it. With hesitation, she ended up calling anyway. She tried to tell them, holding in the shake of her voice, that I had ran out and this time I didn't come back. The police began to ask questions. She didn't have much of a choice but to answer and reveal why it was I had left. My mom knew what may come and accepted the consequences. My dad found out what was happening. He hung up the phone with his finger and began to tell her off, telling her things like, "This is our business, not anyone else's." Probably his catchphrase if he had one. That's when it got physical, if last night wasn't enough. This fed the fire that was already lit in the form of a flyer. In my mom's arms, I told her I'm sorry I wasn't there to defend her. Ponyboy said from behind, that was his job. We both broke up our hug and looked at Pony. It was his job to protect the family. Or it should have been. Pony continued. "This is Ponyboy," I told my mom. She shook his hand. "Sorry, I would have preferred a better time to have made your acquaintance," my mom said. Ponyboy replied, "Yeah, I'm sorry about all this." My mom replied, holding herself. "It was coming." "It was coming," she nodded hesitantly while taking a deep breath. I'm not sure if she thought Ponyboy was a nickname or not. She didn't ask. The cop came over, who wanted to ask me questions. So he said, "It looks like things are going to be different now." I didn't know what to say. "No more running away?" he asked. I nodded. He nodded and went his way. A couple of other cops came over to my mom, looking to ask some questions and tell her what will happen from here on. A couple of other cops came over to my mom and looking to ask some questions and tell her what will happen from here on. "Belinda, did you stay at Ponyboy's house last night?" my mom asked, peeking over the cop's shoulder. "Yes," I said. "And it's safe and warm?" "Yes, it is. Very warm," I said back. "Why don't you stay for a few days?" "Are you sure?" I said back, and my mom nodded yes, it's fine. It's safe to say, it's been a lot. A whole lot. So much is going through my mind right now. What's going to happen? I'm not very sure how to feel. At least because I had ran back home to the house, I can write to you, or in you, again, now that you're back in my possession. Ben is swinging by tonight here at Pony Boys. I think Derry let Pony have guests because of the situation. I'm gonna give myself a bit of a break just to process all of this. I'll talk to you later. So, this is a big event in Scout's life. This chapter was something that I had anticipated for a long time, because I knew that this big moment of her life would happen. Especially because when I was watching on YouTube the short-lived Outsiders show, something similar to this storyline here happened in that show. That's kind of where I got it from. I did make it a little different because I feel like this way it fit the story a little better. But anyway, so what's gonna happen next? What is life gonna look like afterwards? I guess you're going to have to see. If anybody's actually listening to my voice right now, thank you very much. Making this was a lot of fun for me, and yeah, and like the fact that I would have an audience at all is really, really cool. Anyways, thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.